Well, good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be with all of you. And Dr. Kusumayati, thank you so much for the generous introduction, but more than that, thank you for decades of service working to improve public health, to educate the next generation of doctors and nurses, including as the first woman to serve as the university's dean of the School of Public Health. From your research on reproductive health to your leadership on Indonesia's COVID task force, your dedication to your community is truly inspirational, and I thank you. And good morning to everyone here. Selamat pagi. It is wonderful to be back in Jakarta. I was here on a couple of occasions when I was last in government as Deputy Secretary of State, and I was looking forward to this opportunity to return. Southeast Asia's largest democracy. And for the students who are in this room, I expect it feels good to be back on campus. I understand many of you have been studying remotely for some time and are looking forward to actually getting back in the classroom. And I'm glad we've had a little bit of an excuse to bring you back together today. I know, Doctor, you and the task force want the students back, and I know how much everyone is looking forward to that. I'm here, we're here, because what happens in the Indo-Pacific will, more than any other region, shape the trajectory of the world in the 21st century. The Indo-Pacific is the fastest growing region on the planet. It accounts for 60% of the world economy, 2/3 of all economic growth over the last 5 years. It's home to more than half the world's people, 7 of the 15 biggest economies. And it's magnificently diverse, more than 3,000 languages, numerous states stretching across 2 oceans and 3 continents. Even a single country like Indonesia is home to a rich patchwork that's hard to distill, except for its variety. And this nation's motto holds, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity, which sounds pretty familiar to an American. In the United States, we say, E pluribus unum, out of many one. It's the same idea. The United States has long been, is, and always will be an Indo-Pacific nation. This is a geographic fact. From our Pacific coast states to Guam, our territories across the Pacific. And it's a historical reality, demonstrated by our 2 centuries of trade and other ties with the region. Today, half of the United States' top trading partners are in the Indo-Pacific. It's a destination for nearly 1/3 of our exports, the source of $900 billion in foreign direct investment in the United States. And that's creating millions of jobs spread across all 50 of our states. And more members of our military are stationed in the region than anywhere outside the continental U.S., ensuring peace and security that have been vital to prosperity in the region, benefiting us all. And of course, we're tied together by our people, whose connections go back generations. There are more than 24 million Asian Americans living in the United States, including Ambassador Sung Kim, when he's not serving his country in one part of the world or another, as he has been for the last 3 decades. Before the pandemic, there were more than 775,000 students from the Indo-Pacific studying at U.S. colleges and universities. And your American classmates here at Universitas Indonesia are among the millions of Americans who have come to the region to study, to work, to live, including one who went on to become our president. There's an Indonesian proverb, one that I'm told kids are taught from a young age. We have 2 ears, but only 1 mouth. That means that before we speak or act, we have to listen. And we've done a lot of listening to people in the Indo-Pacific in the first year of this administration to understand your vision for the region and its future. We've welcomed leaders from the region in our country, including the first 2 foreign leaders President Biden hosted after taking office from Japan and South Korea. and all the foreign ministers whom I've had the privilege of hosting at the State Department, including Foreign Minister Retno. And we've come to your region, Vice President Harris, Secretary of Defense Austin, Secretary of Commerce Raimondo, and so many other cabinet members, not to mention many senior State Department officials from my team. The President has participated in multi-leader level summits held by key regional bodies, APEC, the U.S. ASEAN and East Asia summits, and the Quad, made up of India, Japan, and Australia. I've done the same with fellow foreign ministers, including hosting the Mekong-U.S. Partnership Ministerial. And President Biden has met with Indo-Pacific leaders overseas as well, including a very productive meeting with President Shikowi in Glasgow during the COP26. But we're not just listening to leaders at our embassies and consulates across the region. Our diplomats are using 2 ears to take in the views of people from all walks of life, students, activists, academics, entrepreneurs. And while it's an extraordinarily diverse region with distinct interests, distinct views, we see a great deal of alignment between the vision we're hearing from the Indo-Pacific and our own. People and governments of the region want more, better opportunities for all of their people. They want more chances to connect within their nations, between their nations, around the world. They want to be better prepared for crises like the pandemic that we're living through. They want peace and stability. They want the United States to be more present and more engaged. And above all, they want a region that is more free and more open. So what I'd like to do today is to try to set out that shared vision and how together we're going to work to make it a reality. And there are 5 core elements that I'd like to focus on. First, we will advance a free and open Indo-Pacific. Now, we talk a lot about a free and open Indo-Pacific, but we don't often define what we actually mean by that. Freedom is about the ability to write your future and have a say in what happens in your community and your country, no matter who you are or who you know. And openness naturally flows from freedom. Free places are open to new information and points of view. They're open to different cultures, religions, ways of life. They're open to criticism, to self-reflection, as well as to renewal. When we say that we want a free and open Indo-Pacific, we mean that on an individual level, that people will be free in their daily lives and live in open societies. We mean that on a state level, that individual countries will be able to choose their own path and their own partners. And we mean that on a regional level, that in this part of the world, problems will be dealt with openly, rules will be reached transparently and applied fairly, goods and ideas and people will flow freely across land, cyberspace, and the open seas. We all have a stake in ensuring that the world's most dynamic region is free from coercion and accessible to all. This is good for people across the region. It's good for Americans, because history shows that when this vast region is free and open, America is more secure and more prosperous. So, we'll work with our partners across the region to try to realize this vision. We'll continue to support anti-corruption and transparency groups, investigative journalists, think tanks across the region, like the Avocado Institute in Sri Lanka. With our support, that institute created a public registry of state-owned enterprises like banks and airlines that operate with big losses and propose ways to reform them. We're finding partners in government, too, like Victor Soto. He's the mayor of the city of Pasig in the Philippines. Victor set up a 24/7 hotline for constituents to report cases of corruption, has made the awarding of public contracts more transparent, has given community-based organizations a say in the way the city spends its resources. He's part of the State Department's first group of global anti-corruption champions that we announced earlier this year. And we'll continue to learn best practices from our fellow democracies. That's the idea behind the Summit for Democracy that President Biden convened last week, where President Jokowi spoke. Indeed, he was the first speaker. And the Bali Democracy Forum that Indonesia just held for the 14th time, and where I had an opportunity to speak. We'll also stand up against leaders who don't respect their people's rights, as we're seeing now in Burma. We'll continue to work with our allies and partners to press the regime to cease its indiscriminate violence, release all those unjustly detained, allow unhindered access, and restore Burma's path to inclusive democracy. ASEAN has developed a 5-point consensus that calls on the regime to engage in constructive dialogue with all parties to seek a peaceful resolution that respects the will of the Burmese people, a goal we will not give up on. Another way we'll promote freedom and openness is by defending an open, interoperable, secure, and reliable Internet against those who are actively working to make the Internet more closed, more fractured, less secure. We'll work with our partners to defend these principles and help build the secure, trusted systems that lay the foundation for it. At the Moon-Biden Leaders Summit earlier this year, the Republic of Korea and the United States announced more than $3.5 billion in investments in emerging technologies, including research and development on secure 5G and 6G networks. Finally, we'll work with our allies and partners to defend the rules-based order that we built together over decades to ensure the region remains open and accessible. And let me be clear about one thing. The goal of defending the rules-based order is not to keep any country down. Rather, it's to protect the right of all countries to choose their own path, free from coercion, free from intimidation. It's not about a contest between a U.S.-centric region or a China-centric region. The Indo-Pacific is its own region. Rather, it's about upholding the rights and agreements that are responsible for the most peaceful and prosperous period this region and the world has ever experienced. That's why there's so much concern, from Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia, and from the Mekong River to the Pacific Islands, about Beijing's aggressive actions, claiming open seas as their own, distorting open markets through subsidies to its state-run companies, denying the exports or revoking deals for countries whose policies it does not agree with, engaging in illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing activities. Countries across the region want this behavior to change. We do too. That's why we're determined to ensure freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, where Beijing's aggressive actions there threaten the movement of more than $3 trillion worth of commerce every year. It's worth remembering that tied up in that colossal number, $3 trillion, are the actual livelihoods and well-being of millions of people across the world. When commerce can't traverse open seas, that means that farmers are blocked from shipping their produce. Factories can't ship their microchips. Hospitals are blocked from getting life-saving medicines. 5 years ago, an international tribunal delivered a unanimous and legally binding decision firmly rejecting unlawful, expansive South China Sea maritime claims as being inconsistent with international law. We and other countries, including South China Sea claimants, will continue to push back on such behavior. It's also why we have an abiding interest in peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, consistent with our long-standing commitments. Second, we will forge stronger connections within and beyond the region. We'll deepen our treaty alliances with Japan, the Republic of Korea, Australia,